Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. I am in the middle of falling asleep. It is past midnight, which might seem early. It's beneficial to be off this. However, this is somewhat of a public service announcement, and that is meant not as condescending or demeaning. That's just the best approximation of articulation for this situation. I'm falling asleep. Literally, I'm in the middle of falling asleep. Experiencing some kind of bugger bites at the moment. Might be insects from today. Just noticing it at this moment with the scratchy after midnight. Right. Oh, all right. So, public service. This week, it's been a long day today, but also a very actually intense, low key intense week. And it's only it's the conclusion of our work week officially, but conventionally it's just midweek. In this intense week, low key, we have a number of diplomatic conversations, productive, congenial diplomatic conversations. Deal with a fair amount of static, not even not too hostile, and it actually is reconciled significantly, but just a lot, comparatively speaking, without doing much, to be honest. And what I mean, I'm talking about just like right where we stay. A lot of things going on. It's an election year in the theater of politics on this land. Cats get further hype. It's summer. The weather's getting warmer. Kinfolk get into the mating thing, and beyond that, activity, just being out. Societally, it's the Wild Wild West, and it's becoming further and further like undeniable. Just, I won't say the lawlessness, but it's picking up. So there are a lot of conditions, and a lot of it is in the subtle passive aggressive mode, but it's very, very blatant predatoriness. It's actually, you could say cannibalism. Let's be careful about that because that's a serious thing. Buggeration. This right here. What am I talking about? These joints right here. Bumpy dumpies. This is not time for jokiness. I'm getting to the crux of what I'm saying. So, anyways, it's static. I mean, and it's not. It's like, how to describe this? The methodologies are comparatively subtle, increasingly less subtle, but still subtle. The nature of the aggressions is very rhetoric. It is verbal, questions, feigned questions, proddings, and additionally, and to be honest, I'm less interested in trying to like decode and like decipher all the different games that are being run. But it's so obvious that cats are doing things that are not what cats are actually doing. Asking questions, investigating, and being very provocative, being very impositional, with feigned pretenses. So Uh, Anyways, that's general circumstance. That's outside of the diplomatic conversations that I initially referenced. So that's in the context or in the larger environment. Um, the government is losing its hold on social order, and that's not a beneficial thing. It's not. It's like I said, there's a lawlessness that is increasing, um, and all right. So within these conditions and within the diplomacy, I'm trying to think of what bug this might be. These two bites. You don't care what these bites are. It's maybe two or three bites. Um, I think of a spider, but usually the bites these are this bigger than a spider. It's some type of insect, but I don't remember having any mosquito experience. Maybe it happened without me being mindful, but I'm scratching it so it gets bigger. Um, like I said, I'm falling asleep right now, so um, I'm increasingly susceptible to the scratching at this moment. Anyways, all right, so we've had diplomacy, um, we've had kicking up dust, we've had reconciliations after kicking up dust. Um, we've had continuing kicking up dust from multiple parties. We've had gangster territorialism. Um, we've had spiritual um, fellowship. Uh, we've had mating overtures and observations. I mean, all right, so fatigue, concentration. My point for sharing them. What am I doing here? What my point for all this, right? What's going on? Concerning the diplomacy, it seems as though kinfolk are increasingly aware of myself, of what we do around myself, and are increasingly encouraged, motivated, prompted, calculating one or any of the or one or further of those in terms of approaching me and initiating discussion. So beautiful. Hallelujah. We give thanks and praise. That being said, what we observe within a number of the recent diplomatic reasonings with holy kinfolk, holy sacred kinfolk, what we observe is that many kinfolk who have an interest, a motivation, a necessity of negotiating with us, continuing to resort to historic practices of manipulation or down talking and otherwise. So this is a public service announcement concerning these methodologies of communication. So in the earthly sense, in this earthly sense, that the game doesn't work that way. We're different. We're a different breed. We are a different breed, um, and we are. We're not perfect. We're not invincible. Yet, we are not susceptible or acquiescent to a lot of the tactics, the twisted talk, the talking down, the side talk, the carrot stick talk, a lot of these different methodologies. It's not happening. Now we don't address it directly. We don't respond to the ego prodding, the pride prodding, the insults all the time. So it's not a matter of like calling things out, the quick talking, the slide things by talking. We observe it. We focus on what's important, the priority at that moment in that window of opportunity. We share what we can for the interest of the mutual beneficial agreement and cooperation, without getting caught up in all the small uh, challenge or the lesser priority type joints. But it's appropriate to recognize, to call out those methodologies, those tactics, or otherwise. Sometimes kinfolk are very blatant, and sometimes kinfolk know exactly what they're doing. Sometimes kinfolk are just, that's how kinfolk are raised, or that's how kinfolk are conditioned, and don't aren't are less aware of doing that. Either way, um, it's not just ineffective; it is counterproductive to the communication and to the agreement. Because a lot of times, when kinfolk get involved in this type of diplomacy, um, with other kinfolk who are perceived as lesser than, or menials or whatever else, there's less of an interest, or less of there tends to be less of a perceived necessity of needing those other kinfolk. So, and it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter. Yeah, as long as they just like don't do it. It's beneficial to recognize that the conditions at this moment are not those. You need us. We need you. So we need all of us to have proficient, honest, genuine communication, respectful communication, mutually respectful, so that the fruits of these conversations are increasingly genuine and enduring. So that's the purpose of me sharing this. And just because we don't call things out, just because we don't respond to provocations, we're not predatory. We're less concerned about ego. Or less concerned about pride and insults. And additionally, we focus on the priorities. Um, I communicate this because observing the tendencies within recent conversations, within recent reasonings, in the interest of minimizing the continuation of these tactics or methodologies in ongoing negotiations and diplomacy, God willing. Um, it's simply an encouragement for kinfolk to be aware of what kinfolk are doing, and be further encouraged and inspired and disciplined towards initiating and maintaining mutually respectful communication. Um, Full stop. So, in the earthly sense, we're not the dogs, we're not the subordinates, we're not the boys, we're not the girls, we're not the children of enslavement or otherwise, of subordination, of even oppression. So, all right, there's that. The talking down, the talking around, the twisted talking additionally. Let's collectively up our game in terms of communication and in negotiation. Um, the old standbys are gone. This is a different world today. We're not in charge. We're not trying to be in charge. Um, that's something else. Um, we can't even say who we are, um, because this is the nature of the collective at this point. We walk the streets, and when we see kinfolk for this first time in life, and we walk with an awareness that kinfolk may know exactly everything about us, and may be exactly 100% against us, or one may be 100% for us. This is the nature of our cipher and our circumstances. So, that being said, any kinfolk from other communities that engage in diplomacy with us, we communicate what our intentions are, we communicate what our discipline is, and additionally what our ethics are, and additionally, but also be advised that everything is under surveillance by multiple agencies, and we abstain from controlling all the entities that are doing that surveillance. Uh, so it's not even a matter of, even when we agree to something, uh, recognize that there are many additional constituencies that are involved in that conversation, that are privy to that conversation, that may or may not also agree with whatever is said in that conversation on any particular side. So that's one of the reasons why it's beneficial to get beyond the side talking and everything else and be as direct and honest as possible, because the the powers that be um, are on multiple sides, and don't specifically directly answer to what we do or say. Now, we do have considerable influence, but it's not just because of what we say, it's how we live. And so, whatever we say um, in the conversation, um, from our side, from our discipline, it's beneficial for it to align with how we live. Um, so, uh, that's from our side, and part of what the reason why we cultivate a calmness, a quietness, and strive for honesty and clearness, um, because this is the nature of our communication. Some of the techniques within our rhetoric, within how we are, within our verbal discipline, we tend to abstain from making commands, telling other people what to do. That tends to be reserved for emergency and urgent circumstances. Occasionally, talking to actual children, particularly under the age of puberty and further, but it's not a specific designation of time. It's just occasionally on that respect. But otherwise, emergencies and urgencies. Talking to people, even casually, we're very mindful of abstaining from imposing commands on people, even in jest, because this is the nature of our trot. So that's one thing. Another thing is we tend to abstain from utilizing negative rhetoric. We speak in the positive affirmational rhetoric. Not always, but very often. We also are mindful of making absolute statements like everything is 100%, haha, how about that? Given the hypothetical that I shared just a minute ago. We are mindful that absolute statements tend to be comparatively inaccurate, because there's always something that can be contrary to what we're saying. So everybody hates da 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 da. Everybody does this. So just factual statements, and being mindful of the factual statements being factual. And how can we discern anything of being factual when we're relying upon others? And additionally, we can work with common knowledge, and we can frame our statements in saying many people, or it seems, and da 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 da. So that's just some of the guidance and some of the some examples about our discipline of rhetoric, in being as honest as possible within our communication. So it also seems that a number of people, a number of groups, a number of communities are continue being entrenched within these archaic borders, social borders, meaning just the prejudices or perceived divisions and us versus them, divide and conquer type mentalities. Even when there are so many further greater threats at this moment. And I'm specifically talking about in the context of culture, tribal, and religious differences, staying entrenched in the animosities between those communities and being oblivious to the much greater threats and harms that exist at this moment. I'm speaking particularly of the, wow, very comfortable mouse right now, just being very loud. It gets to be a little bit like, yo, disrespectful. I'm supposed to be going to sleep. So if this prolonged rambling is wearing, weary of one's patience, I'm supposed to be sleeping right now. It's 1 a.m. So the old tactics of talking down and this, that, and the other, it's not working. The perceived divisions between communities, it doesn't even matter when you recognize what's going on at this moment. And as I was about to say a second ago, what I'm referring to is one of the things that I'm referring to. Well, put it like this. For kinfolk who have like continuing beefs, black, white, Asian, European, native, settler, and additionally, whether it's religious, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, whatever those beefs are, those beefs, there are things that are much further concerning for all parties, and it's beneficial for all parties to get beyond those hang-ups. You don't have to agree, you don't have to even like each other, but get beyond those hang-ups and be proficient enough to find some type of common ground to cooperate with each other, to not just coexist. We have to cooperate with each other because this is part of what's involved. This is what is necessary. An example is a conversation that I have with kinfolk recently in this front of diplomacy. And the questions I ask initially to kinfolk is, do you believe in God? Up front. With that being said, the second one is, are you against pedophilia? Next one is, are you against cannibalism? Because these are some of the predominant threats to the well-being of life, and particularly human life, humanoid life at this moment in the world. For some that might sound crazy, whatever else, but the gangsterism and everything else like that is enslaved to pedophiles and cannibals. Pedophiles and cannibals are working the puppetry for people with guns and everything else like that. Today's guns are yesterday's swords. People talk about bringing a knife to a gunfight. People are bringing guns to biological, genetic engineering chemical warfare. So that's where things are at this moment. It's just don't people don't even look hard. People look stupid, and I'm not insulting. It's respect, but just this is facts. That's nature, and it's not inviting kinfolk to say, "Oh, no, I'm not bulletproof. I'm not whatever." But it's recognizing what the genuine threats are. How cats are being scooped up and enslaved, not just in prisons, in hospitals, being slowly anesthetized and withdrawn, abducted from society in broad daylight, according to the rules on record, and gradually euthanized. This is being standard practice through all these different pretenses. And it's not white, it's not black, it's imperialism. And for many, for 100 years or so, the face of imperialism is seen as a white face. That's part of the tactic of imperialism. Divide and conquer, setting a standard, directing people to find a drawn line and then pick a side on one of those. And then the methodologies of manipulation and subordination are imposed on all the different sides that people pick. So it's evolving at this point. So it's a Beijing androgynous imperialism. And the methodology is not going around and scooping up people and getting a firing squad and making public executions. That's not how it's done today. It's done very low key with smiling faces and very calm and polite talking and communications of concern and proddings to provoke a reaction of anger because of the disrespect and invasion. And then with that response of anger, then saying, oh, hostile, lockup, forced drugs, isolation, prolonged captivity, and further. So that is being done to kinfolk of all colors, of all creeds. And the potentates that are doing this via science, and this is not antagonistic towards science, but this is part of the parcel, evolving from the works, the experiments from World War II and before that. It's just a continuation. I'm getting a little bit all over the place here, but it's the Beijing androgyny. It is substantial, however, it is also other than invincible either. There are methodologies of countering it in terms of keeping it at bay, keeping it at a distance. There are methodologies of reasoning with it, brokering effective, basic, low-key treaties and ceasefires, and additionally, but those methodologies of keeping the beige androgynous imperialism at bay, at a distance, that requires effective peace and reconciliation, cooperation between peoples of different backgrounds. that requires genuine communication, honest, mutually respectful concentration. So, again, a lot of those go to lines of argument, lines of distraction, manipulation, avoidance, and additionally, we don't respond to everything. We don't address and call out everything that we observe and everything that we experience. But it's beneficial to recognize that it's not happening, it's not working, and you need us. You need this cooperation. You need what we bring to the table. Half an hour at this joint. It's not, the future is not in the hands of the youth either. The future is in the hands of ethics and honesty, righteous walking. Righteous living. I'm reminded, I'm supposed to say that um, in this past week, amidst all the diplomacy, reasonings, and static and reconciliation, there's an occasion where I communicate with a young sister who approaches me, um, and I communicate to the sister. I share this in the interest of this, in the prospect of this somehow reaching her in some way to be informed accordingly. But anyways, um, she approaches me about a circumstance, and this is exactly after just minutes before receiving a number of different similar approaches. So when she approaches, there's less patience, no excuses, but that's the context. And she doing something that is recognized as hostile. She doing something that's recognized as soldiering. Um, I address that in my response to her. First, I invite her to talk with another brother that I had just finished talking with. She says that she's with a different group. Okay. So then I stop. And before she finishes introducing her spiel, I let it be known to her already. The first question she asks me is about is to discern my citizenship and political involvement with the imperialism and atrocities that the republic sitting on this land is conducting. So I inform her that the compact of that republic is evil. And I emphasize that she is not evil, but that compact is evil because it is a compact of causing harm, atrocities on this land. So she seems to acknowledge that. She seems to recognize that. So I call the compact, the U.S. Constitution, evil. And in addition to that, I explained to her that when she is approaching people and soliciting people to pledge allegiance to that contract, to that compact, through the guise of citizenship, being a registered voter, she is soliciting people into participating in something that is evil, something that causes harm and atrocities towards others. So I explained that pretty much in that way. What I abstain from saying that is appropriate for me to say is that not only is she not evil, however, she is also a child of God. She is a child of the Most High. So it's appropriate to communicate the affirmation. beyond just not being evil, but to affirm the divine presence within herself, so that the message that is shared concerning what she is doing is better received and resonant. So, anyways, I share that for the record for the benefit that that provides. Um, I'm abstaining from getting into the topics, the specific details of the reasonings within this past week that I'm actually referencing. Um, I'm discerning, and this is not the hour to make that decision. As I mentioned, once it gets dark, we have to be mindful of making political, diplomatic, even economic decisions that have um, a direct influence on the conditions of the next 7 generations and beyond. So that at this moment involves me abstaining from identifying what the specific conversations are, what we talk about, what the subject matter is, and additionally who the participants are. I need to discern whether that's appropriate information to share at this moment. So um, I'm just going to um, from keep from articulating that. Um, anyway, all right. So I abstain from getting into the specifics about what is recently said, who is involved in the conversations. At least at this moment, it might be topic for another conversation, another joint like this that ain't supposed to be done as much as it's been being done. Um, there's something else I'm trying to think about at the moment called to share. For those who are attached to the conventional constructs of the United States, the Constitution, corporations, all these institutions that are built from the U.S. Constitution, and also attached to the social protocols and norms around these constructs, the hierarchies of who's perceived as highly valued, those who are perceived as lowly valued, how people talk and treat people along this spectrum, and additionally to recognize wheelbarrows to the bakery. All those constructs, all those tactics, all those techniques of communication, talking down to people, passive aggressiveness, twisted talk, half truths, fast talking, particularly along the lines of perceived notions of superiority. Wheelbarrows to the bakery. It's comparable to, it's likened to the experience within the past century of people having a whole lot of money in a particular government, in a particular society. And being able to do all the different types of things with that money, throw money here, eat nice, treat people a certain way. Oh, it doesn't matter. We're paying them. They can afford that. They can deal with what we give them. Those types of mentalities, particularly based upon having money and treating people, particularly those with less money, those who seem to have a need for money. Wheelbarrows to the bakery, because the lessons that are taught to us, that are shared with us from the past century, is the example of people who've had stacks of money saved and put it away for a rainy day, and eventually warfare emerging. And with that warfare, the stability of the government significantly decreases. And with that instability of the government, the value of all that money that was stacked up after years and years and years, that money becomes very less valuable, to the point where, in order to purchase a loaf of bread from the bakery, people bring wheelbarrow loads of cash to pay for the bread. Inflation, distrust, and additionally, and so how this compares to today's circumstances about classism, racism, xenophobia, religious animosities and hostilities, holding on to the things that make one feel superior against all those otherness, whether it's money, whether it's class status from membership within certain clubs, whether it's alumni status from academic institutions, whether it's job or otherwise, whatever that sense of superiority is, and particularly that tactic of talking down to people and thinking it's okay to talk down to people because, oh, we've got plenty of money. If they don't like it, we'll hire somebody else. Wheelbarrows to the bakery. Before the war, somebody could fill a wheelbarrow full of cash and think about all the things that a person can do to put down somebody else with that cash. But when the warfare emerges, the inflation rises, and the cash has little currency. It becomes necessary to stack up all that cash in a wheelbarrow just to go to the bakery and purchase a loaf of bread. Beige, androgynous imperialism. Solution with and beyond that is natural. Honesty, modesty, a sense of purpose in this life, and a discipline in fulfilling that purpose continually. Relationship with our ancestors, relationship with nature, creation, relationship with Creator, the Most High, Elohim, known by many different names, by many different peoples of many different lands. That is solution. beyond the prominent challenges that confront life on Earth and life in this universe. Solution is working with each other with ethical discipline, with patience, understanding, and respect. I'm hearing scratching, and usually the flying squirrels let me know that they're here before kind of just settling in. Haven't seen that today, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Sometimes I might not notice it. So when I hear the scratching at this moment, I think, okay, is that inside or is that outside? It very often sounds inside, but it very often is actually outside. Sometimes it's the radiator. And that would be a booger right now on the screen. At the moment, it might be the flying squirrels, but I don't see it yet. And it's late. I should be going to sleep rather than figuring out distractions from ramblings of nearly an hour long. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to share at this moment that precipitates me doing this joint right now. I said basically the gist of it. There are additional details and insight regarding the circumstances of the past week. For the moment, I'm keeping it at this. I share this public service announcement for kinfolk who may have the occasion of being in another negotiation and diplomacy with myself personally, directly, and or with others eventually at some point. So I share this consideration for the purpose of optimally advancing within that diplomacy and negotiation with optimal mutual respect and productivity within the communication. Additionally, I and I communicate this with an awareness of how much this internet phenomena, this medium, caters to the particular proclivities of women. How having all this information available is extremely empowering for women. Doing these talks, and additionally, now that being said, there's also awareness how some men, cultivate a very advanced skill of deceitful communication, of framing things like false predictions, feigned predictions, saying, I bet you I can make that person do such and such and such. And then, whenever seeming to be able to follow through with that, the women with whom he communicates that seem to have a further confidence and trust and dependency, support for such a man. So, I and I communicate this here, this entire joint right at the moment, in the interest of women being increasingly knowledgeable about when a man is being honest, when his actions are being honest. And to be mindful of the power and influence that exists beyond a man's words. And to invest one's trust and study to that honesty. So it's time for me to get something to drink. Late at night, tired, running the mouth, cough. For brethren and sisters who are in the trot, who experience some of this disrespect, and additionally, to be calm. Don't get mad, don't blame, and don't try to get even. Don't punish. No mad, no blame, no punish. That's commands and that's negative rhetoric. What up? But in doing that, no mad, no blame, no punishment, it helps us retain and cultivate and strengthen our honesty and the powers that be within that honesty. That's what's here to share at the moment. Again, not trying to be ego, not trying to be feign or claim superiority or inferiority in any way. To let folk know that our methodology of communication doesn't call everything out, doesn't try to nitpick everything that is found as disagreeable or offensive. We focus on priority, and the conversation is ongoing, and it's beyond ourselves as well. So we do our best to do what we're supposed to do at this moment. There are powers beyond ourselves. The ancient teachers teach us that a righteous man is a servant to all beings. So, in that respect, we have countless bosses, many of whom have direct access to the transcripts of our conversations. So, when involved in the negotiation, to recognize that the conditions are intrinsically beyond ourselves. So we do our best to be honest about that and candid. So, but some of that involves an element of faith and belief. So that's it. It's time to go. All thanks and praise to the Most High. Blessing, love, and peace in Rastafari.